Okay, good morning, everyone. So, we are going to start off by a factoring review for today. Okay, and so, of course, the instructions are always to factor completely. Number one, 4y squared minus 16y cubed. Okay, now remember, there are 7 different types of factoring. There's GCF, there's grouping, there's what we consider the easy trinomials where a is 1, and then we have the harder trinomials where a is not 1, and we have difference of squares, we have sum and difference of cubes. Okay, so technically there's 7 patterns. So when you're looking at something, you always want to start with GCF. It's the most basic type of factoring, so we always want to look and see, can I simplify it just based on common factors? So looking at our information, that's true for this problem. They both have a factor of 4, and they both have a factor of y squared. So therefore, I can factor out 4y squared. Well, what would be left? Well, if I take 4y squared away from 4y squared, I just have 1. And 4y squared away from negative 16y cubed would be negative 4y. Okay. Now, once you get to here, you want to see, can I go any further? But there are 2 terms, they are differences, but they are not differences of squares. If this had been y squared, different story, but it's not, so therefore there's nothing else we can do. Okay, so this is our final answer. Okay, now a big thing to think about for this one. One, make sure you always leave your GCF in your answer. 2, don't force factoring. Okay, I have a lot of students that will try to factor because they think it has to do something more, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just a one-step factoring, but there are other times where you need to keep going. So you always just double check and then you're good to go. Okay, number 2, negative 6x cubed plus 3x squared plus 9x. So again, the first thing you need to do is look for a GCF. That out of the way. Okay, so looking at our numbers, they are each a factor of 3. Looking at our variables, they each have a factor of x. Now, because our leading term is negative, we want to pull a negative number as well. Okay, so we're going to pull out a negative 3 versus just 3, and we're going to pull out an x. That's going to make my leading term positive while also taking out a GCF. So I'll be left with 2x squared minus x minus 3. Now at this point, we have a trinomial where a doesn't equal 1. So I want to set it up and see, can I factor further? So we set up our 2 binomials. We set up our options for 2x squared, which is a nice one because it's prime. So therefore, we know it has to be 2x and x. And then we want to do guess and check to figure out our options. Well, factors of 3 are just 1 and 3, so we actually don't have a lot to think about or worry about. So looking at our numbers, if I have 1 here and 3 here, that'd be 6 and 1x, which isn't going to get me to negative x. So it must be the opposite option. So because I'm pretty sure it has to be this option, I'm going to go ahead and write it inside. And that's going to give me 2x and 3x. Well, if I play with my negative sign, I could get to negative x. And because I want it to be negative, that means I need the 3 to be negative and the 1 to be positive. And double check my work. 2x times x, 2x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3x plus 2x is negative x. And negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. So it works. I confirmed it by practicing it in my head. Now, if you need to write that out, that's totally fine. But you can also just multiply in your head. All right, let's try the next one. Y squared minus 100. Okay, like I said, you always want to practice with GCF first. So there is not anything in common with these two terms, so we can't do GCF. Well, the only other things you can do with two terms would either be difference of squares or difference of cubes. And in this situation, we have difference of squares. Dead giveaway, y squared. So difference of squares means that you take the square root of the first term. So square root of y squared is y. And you split it between two binomials. Then you take the square root of the number, not with the negative sign. So square root of 100 is 10. And then you need a positive version and a negative version. And let's double check and prove why that comes out that way. So y times y is y squared, but then you get negative 10y and positive 10y, which cancel out, leading to that middle term to be gone. And then 10 times negative 10 is negative 100. Okay, great job. Let's try the next one. X cubed minus 2x squared minus 4x plus 8. Okay, now this is a dead giveaway that it is grouping. And the reason why is because it is 4 terms. So with grouping, we split it in half and essentially do GCF for both sides. So for this first 2 terms, we want to take out what's common. So it'd be x squared, and I'm left with x minus 2. Now, in order for grouping to work, you have to repeat the same binomial. So I also need x minus 2 to come out or to stay in of the second part. So in order for that to be true, I need to figure out what I have to take out. So the best way is just looking at your first term. So negative 4x and x. Well, in order for that to be true, I'd have to take out negative 4, which is true for the second term as well. Now, once you do that, you're going to rewrite the common factor, which is x minus 2, and you're going to combine the GCFs like so. Okay, so that's factor by grouping. As always, you want to double check and see, is there anything else I can do to keep going? Well, you can, because here you should notice we have a difference of squares. And that is the same pattern we just did on number 3. So difference of squares, square root of first term is x. Square root of the second term is 2. We need a positive version and a negative version. Okay, which this works perfectly fine as an answer, but some of you might want to write it a little bit more condensed. And when I mean condensed, I just simply mean because we have 2 x minus 2's, you could write it as x minus 2 quantity squared times x plus 2. So either answer works, but that would be the final answer, depending on if you'd like to condense it to that. Okay, let's do one more. 16x squared plus 6x minus 24. Definitely going to make you work for it. So this one's definitely a guessing one. So 16, factors of 16 are 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. And then factors of 27 are 1 and 27, and 3 and 9. Okay, now when we learn this material, I always said it's very rare that it's the first set of terms. It's very rare that it's 1 and 16 and 1 and 27, or whatever the factors are. Normally, I wouldn't say a percentage wise, but normally we're going to go with like 70, 80% of the time, it's the smaller factors. Okay. Unless for some reason you're looking for a very large middle term, but we're not. So therefore, we're not going to want the biggest numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and automatically start with the next set of numbers. And obviously that leaves 3 and 9 being my really only option that makes sense because multiplying by 27 doesn't make sense and multiplying by 16 doesn't make sense. So I'm going to tentatively cross those out because I assume mentally that those are not going to work. Now, I could go back, but based on logic, that's not going to be necessary. Okay, so let's try 2x and 8x. Okay, now one of the tricks I've taught you is that you should never have even numbers together, which isn't going to be a problem here because 3 and 9 are both odd, so don't have to worry about it. And 3 and 9 are not factors of 2 and 8. So more of a guess and check option. So if I try 3 and 9, and I always just write it below until I'm really certain. So I have 2x times 9, which is 18x, and 3x times, 3 times 8x, which is 24x. Now with those two, could I potentially get to 6? I actually can. So this actually is going to be really nice. It thinks this one's going to work out. But we need to make sure we have the correct negative sign. Well, if this term is going to stay positive, that means the larger number needs to be positive, and the smaller has to be negative with the multiplying. So what got us 24? That was 3 times 8x, so it's going to be plus 3 and minus 9. And that is how we get our answer by the guess and check method. And then we just got lucky by being able to guess and check it right off the bat. Okay, so that is your factoring review, which will apply for many lessons, especially for continuing today.